All right, folks, the right is now trying to push to limit the First Amendment in order to protect Israel's right to produce and maintain their propaganda narratives. Over the past few years, it's been mostly the left who's been trying to censor people and restrict free speech. People have been so-called canceled for not giving in to the social pressures of the day, for not using the correct gender pronouns that are preferred by certain individuals. And in places as close by as Canada, this has been enforceable by law, and the left has been imprisoning people for wrongthink, whether that's opposing vaccine mandates, criticizing pharmaceutical companies in general, criticizing the so-called medical science behind the whole gender transition movement and the vaccine maximalism. But now, ever since this war broke out between Israel and Hamas, the American right is back into full anti-free speech mode, just as they were after 9/11. Not only are they denouncing every single person who might not go all the way along with their Israeli supremacist viewpoints, not only are they calling those people anti-Semites and awful white nationalists and just the worst people on earth, doing the exact same thing that the left does when you disagree with them, calling you a Nazi or a racist. The right, of course, is making those exact same accusations about people who disagree with them on how many billions of dollars we should send to Israel. But it's worse than that. We first saw this a couple days ago with the state of Florida, which has a notorious law against opposing Israeli domestic policy. You cannot criticize Israel to a certain extent under Florida law and be a part of the state government. In other words, you can't be a public school teacher or even apparently a student in any of the state's education system, whether that's higher education, lower education, primary, secondary, I guess in higher is normally how they classify those things. Anyway, according to the governor, who sent or was it the attorney general, I can't remember, who sent a letter to the state university system, or maybe it was from the state university system out of the colleges, I can't remember now, ordering these so-called, pro-Palestine clubs to be disbanded on college campuses, citing this very law against opposing Israel. But they were actually careful in how they worded the letter. I didn't talk about it on the day it happened because they didn't invoke sort of the entirety of the law. What they invoked was, hey, these people are openly justifying acts of violence against innocent civilians. They specifically referred to the initial attack by Hamas and saying, we can't have student groups who are, who exist to support acts of terror against civilians, and so it was the most. They went with the strongest claims that they could against these groups and saying this is why we're disbanding them. And I understand that if you take it at face value from a university standpoint, this is still, we have free speech, yes, but this is still a school with rules, and so. When you get into the stage of supporting overt acts of terror against civilians, yeah, it's totally fair for a school to disband your club at that point. If there are any grounds for disbanding a club based on what you say, that would be it. But the law in Florida is actually much more broad. Anything, even including support of the BDS movement, which is just a fancy way of saying boycotting Israel, is illegal under Florida state law. If I, let's say, wanted to be a school teacher, I could not openly boycott Israeli products. Now, how many products available in this country are made in Israel? I mean, I can think of like two, like what, the Tavor and the Jericho. Other than that, I don't really know of things that are made in Israel that are commonly sold in the United States. But this is just showing you how broad this law is. The so-called anti-Semitism or anti-anti-Semitism law. This is supposed to be a law against anti-Semitism, which of course is not about just hating Jewish people in general. It is about specifically opposing Israeli state policy. And now we have Nikki Haley promising to pass a federal law that is essentially the same as the Florida law, which we can assume, or which we can pretty much bet is going to be pretty broadly enforced. She's promising this law is going to have teeth. This law is going to be different. And she basically wants to try and force this on students across the country and make it impossible to oppose Israel on a college campus. Now, there's a lot of terrible things that are, a lot of terrible ideas that are promulgated on college campuses. I think, pretty infamously, American college campuses are full of communists, sexual degenerates, and of course, the gender nonconformists. Let's just use that term to be broad about it. The people who reject their own biology. And that's just one of many terrible ideologies promulgated. I mean, hell, as far as I'm concerned, logical positivism is a terrible stain on the American psyche. And yet you're not going to see laws against it in our schools. No, what you are going to see laws against is opposing the specific policies of the Israeli government. It's a very, very specific thing to make a law about. And to be fair, I do say that laws should be specific, but specifically limiting speech against your political allies is about the most un-American thing I can think of, particularly when you're trying to enforce the dictates of a foreign entity, a foreign power. This would be like George McGovern running for president in 1972, promising to pass a law making it illegal to criticize the Soviet Union. That's what Nikki Haley is pledging to do here. She's making it clear that she is an unregistered foreign agent, even if she's not being paid directly out of pocket by the Israeli government. And don't get me wrong, she's of course being funded by Israeli interests. All of our politicians are. In fact, the top donor to the re-election campaign of our new Speaker of the House, you guessed it, it's AIPAC, the, American Israeli Political Action Conference, an Israeli lobby group. That is the number one donor to our new Speaker of the House, who I pointed out yesterday is putting Israel first, literally, by making support of Israel the first item that is going to come up for debate in the House that will be voted on. Now that he has ascended to the speakership. Now, unfortunately, I would say, this is the kind of thing that could push me away from the GOP and into supporting, someone like a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. For president. But unfortunately, he's, I don't know, I don't think he's anti-free speech on the Israel question. Maybe he's not that bad, but he's still a super big Israel guy. So there is no one running for president, at least, who seems to be particularly sane on this issue. Although I haven't heard too much of what Trump has had to say, but he probably would fall in line on something like this. I don't, especially look at who his cousin, or not his cousin, his son-in-law is, Jared Kushner, who famously shared a bed with Netanyahu. Not at the same time, but when Netanyahu came to town, he used to sleep in little Jared Kushner's bed, and Jared would have to go sleep out on the couch when family friend Bibi Netanyahu was in town. And so when your family is literally sharing a bed with Netanyahu, I don't expect you to be a pretty strong and independent, unbiased voice of reason on the topic of Israel and its pernicious influence inside the United States. And again, I don't really have a big dog in this fight. If anything, I would be biased in favor of the Israelis as well. It's growing up in America, it just went without saying. Of course, we support Israel, but it's Israel's overzealousness and its desire to enforce this ideological purity and to eliminate any and all opposition, particularly within the United States, to itself and to its specific policies, that has made me increasingly hostile towards them. Because if Israel is not a friend to me, and Israel wants to take away my freedoms, why should I be a friend to them? Why is it that our so-called greatest ally is an enemy of my freedom? When Israel does these things, it doesn't make them more friends. It makes them enemies. And so, it's hard to know where we're going to go from here. Who knows? By the 2024 election, will this even still be an issue? Perhaps so. Perhaps we could be embroiled in a full-scale war in the Middle East on Israel's behalf once again by the time that election rolls around, in which case I would hope that Mr. Trump would be running on the platform of getting us out of that war. Because I'm seeing unconfirmed images, these are videos, of U.S. troops landing in Israel that look to me like just a plain old tripwire force. It would be used to justify a full-scale invasion later. And it reminds me a bit of what Reagan did in Beirut in the 80s. He put some U.S. troops there to try and, show that America has a presence here. He stationed some Marines in Beirut, and the barracks were blown up by a truck bomb. And Reagan was not about to go to war in Lebanon and join the Lebanese Civil War. He was just trying to, put a presence there to show, to tone down the violence, to get people to calm down and go, oh, the Americans are here, we better not do anything. And they went, Leroy Jenkins style, and went in and bombed the barracks. And he's like, whoa, these people are nuts. We're not getting involved here. It's time to go. That's enough. No. We're not going to dig in deeper now. We're not going to double down now that we, stuck our nose and got bloodied. Because that's what happened in Beirut. America got a bloody nose, but you know what? We used to have leaders with enough sense who said, you know what? This bloody nose is enough. A bloody nose will heal. You know what's not going to heal? Decapitation. And so he butted his head right out of Beirut. Joe Biden, on the other hand, in his administration, seemed to have the exact opposite intentions. The way that Tony Blinken, who increasingly sounds more and more like the actual president of the United States, he sounds like he is ready for a fight. Which is strange considering he's supposed to be the diplomat, not the war guy. That should be the Pentagon that is, drumming up the war drums, and should be the State Department who's supposed to be trying to keep us out of wars. And the media keeps talking about, oh my gosh, these Americans, in the Middle East keep getting attacked, and those attacks have gone unanswered, and this needs to, there needs to be a response. It's like, okay, America's illegally stationed troops get attacked by the locals in these countries that we're occupying illegally, against the will of the locals. In the case of Syria, we're stealing their oil day by day. We are sapping away the wealth of that country. And when the locals decide to rise up and express their disapproval, they're the ones who are in the wrong. It's America who's the victim. There's just no opposition to this, really, in the conversation. Nobody, I shouldn't say nobody. There's some people, but they're not, there is no national conversation, and these are the two sides. The two sides are, should we sit around and do nothing, or should we just go full nuclear war? Those are your two sides. No one is questioning the bullshit premise. So, anyway, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.